Hello, everybody. Today, I'm with Sky Christopherson. He's a 1996 Olympic alternate and a 2000 Olympic winner. And he has started his own company called Goal Inc. On healthcare for people. So, fantastic opportunity to understand a journey of a big star going through entrepreneurship journey and the interaction IP with that journey. Welcome,
Thank you.
Sky.
It's an honor to be here with you, Bao.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about the Olympic, events you've been associated with? Every single patent examiner that they look to you as a star. This-
Yeah, that was pretty incredible to hear that feedback. Well, being getting the opportunity to have an Olympic journey was something that was just so special and such a like a rare opportunity. And I got to experience it from the inside, living at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado and also down in San Diego as a cyclist. And, just like a college campus where you have different departments for, history, physical education, maybe, the place you go and you eat at the dormitory, we had the same kind of campus. So the Olympic Training Center is basically, it's all geared towards helping that athlete realize their potential, both physically, mentally, in every way. And what I realized when I finished that Olympic experience was that there was a big gap in education and access with the general public, with these things that we were taught in terms of nutrition and mindset and injury free exercise. And that's really became my mission, to share that with the general public and bridge that gap, and in this case through technology, through an app that you're helping us with here.
well, fantastic. So how did you transition from the athlete to the
Oh,
entrepreneur?
and that was actually a rough transition. So, one of the things as an athlete, you tend to go all in and you're very laser focused. You put the blinders on. It's an all day, commitment where you wake up, it's from wake to sleep, and you're living, eating, and breathing being an athlete. And I applied the same approach after I retired from sport to being an entrepreneur. And I went up to Seattle and I started this company called Vicasso, which was a platform. We did do 1.2 million in revenue our first year. We had no investors. It was all sales revenue funded. But to get to that point, using that sort of all in blinders on, my body just absolutely fell apart. I mean, I was doing all the things in the startup culture up there in the tech world in Seattle, which is, pulling all-nighters and, bad diet, eating very, very, very quick, easy things, and just enormous hours in front of the computer, with developers and all of this. And yeah, I ended up in an ambulance thinking I was having a heart attack. So that transition was rough.
Wow, that's amazing. So now just tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with Go
Yeah,
Inc.
so following that experience, and kind of losing my health, that it was very timely. There was a doctor named Eric Topol who gave this TED talk right around that time when I was feeling very sick, and he had this new vision, of this digital health revolution where people would use personal data and use personal apps to really empower themselves for better health and better fitness and better outcomes. And I just thought, wow, this is, for the first time you had these, like continuous glucose sensors, you had phones that could measure your movement, and GPS. I mean, all this stuff was new. And I thought, wow, that's something I really want to, embrace. And so I talked to Topol, and he helped me do a 1 year experiment where I really aimed to get my health back. And I did that, which was great. And it really was getting aware on tracking sleep, tracking nutrition, exercise, getting data and getting insights into this, and really putting awareness onto these things and creating new healthy habits in a balanced way. And that's really what what helped me. So that's the foundation now that, we want to share through this app called Gold.
Well, fantastic. So now, tell us a little a bit about the journeys with the patent system. I think you had a false start, and then somehow we got connected together, and the process continues. Just give us an idea of what was that
That's
journey
right.
like?
Yeah, yeah. That journey, so that was a long, arduous journey to eventually reach you and get to you. And following that experiment with Dr. Topol, I ended up helping the women's cycling team to win medals at the London Olympics. And we did a lot of innovation there around, aggregating data and forming algorithms about how to do this balanced approach to raising baseline health, not just extreme athlete performance, but making the athletes healthier, right? So we came out of that with some algorithms that I assumed would be valuable in terms of protecting the intellectual property. And in the year after that, I found a former Apple attorney, IP attorney, who helped us file a patent. And I remember at the time, we were working remotely, and I, at the time, sold my car to pay for his legal fees. And he got us to a draft, of all of the claims, and then he filed this. And then as he dealt with all of the office actions, the bill that he was, asking for was just astronomical. And eventually we weren't able to pursue it. We just kind of ran into that budgetary roadblock, right? And I don't think that he was really clear in the way that he was communicating the steps and and in drafting it properly. I was getting a lot of red flags there, and it was very frustrating. So eventually, we just abandoned that attempt, unfortunately. And then a couple years later, I met Bao Tran through a mutual trusted friend, and he made the introduction. And Bao agreed to take a look at everything and help us out. And yeah, it was a night and day difference working with you, Bao, versus this attorney that we had before.
Well, thank you so much for that. Tell us a little about the journey of working with me and how we organize the information and your feelings about the
Oh,
process.
I mean, the biggest thing is that, even as an entrepreneur and researching IP and researching patents, it was still very daunting. The depth of this craft or this expertise is just vast and it's pretty intimidating. So when the difference with you, Bao, was that you made this really accessible for me to understand what the steps are, to file a patent and what to expect and how much it's going to cost and all of those things, made it feasible for me to actually go through this process. And it's amazing how easy you made that for us.
Well, part of that success, guys, because you actively participate in the talking to the patent examiners, and the examiners were really impressed with your background. Tell us a little bit about the process where you interact with the patent office.
Well, that was incredible. I mean, I assumed it was just going to be this sort of dry process where write out these claims and you mail them in, and either you hear back that it's rejected or accepted. And I thought that was more or less that was my experience before with the previous attorney. And the difference here was, we that you were able to engage the examiners in a collaborative process and have the ability for us to clarify certain points or ask some questions and get their input. And I thought that was pretty incredible to actually have a conversation, a collaborative process with the with USPTO.
Well, it's always enjoyable to have an inventor that the attorney, I mean, the patent examiner, kind of was a fan of, right? I mean, one of the examiner we ran across, he himself was, a biking enthusiast, and he says, "Wow, that guy's a legend." So I'm so happy I have one of his pieces, and so we have to go through the various usual rejections such as the Section 101, Section 102, Section 103, but because we have that verbal communication, it smooths the processing of the case through allowance. And so by now, you've got about 5 allowances. One of them is going to issue on November 4th of 2025. Tell us about how fast you got them.
Wow. Well, okay. That was unexpected. The speed. I remember when I was introduced to you, to Bao, uh, it was our mutual friend. He said, this guy Bao is a machine. He is so fast and he's so efficient. And usually people, they pump people up, or they're kind of making a pitch on their behalf. And I thought, oh, okay. And wow, it was true. I mean, your speed and your efficiency was just in a completely different dimension than what I experienced with the previous attorney. And your ability to not only, draft these, within days, it was mind blowing, but also just to see through these office actions and this process so timely and so efficiently that we ended up getting allowances, and just absolutely blew my mind in that sense how fast it was.
Yeah, we filed in, I think, April of 2025, and by November, you got the first patent, plus 4 other allowances coming. So in November, we have 5 patents for you from the filing date of early April. So that was a very unique situation, and I'm very glad to be a part of that journey. So now, what's next for you? What's the path? What will it do for you? And then what's your vision?
Yeah. So what my hope now is that having these ideas protected and having these patents will allow us to create a tangible product, that we can bring to market, and that fulfills this mission of bridging the Olympic health and fitness innovation with the general public, and to have, a fantastic IP protection portfolio in place that you helped us with. And as we go and we raise more money and we work with investors, it's just so helpful to have these things in place, and to be able to say, I have 5+ patents is a pretty incredible thing. I never imagined that I would even have one patent, let alone 5 or more. It's just been incredible.
Congrats. You
Thank
deserve it
you.
all.
Yeah. And you know what? I have a little visual aid here too. We drafted what this would look like, and we have this. This is actually
Yeah.
one of the patents right here. It's from the USPTO, framed into a
It's fast. That
visual
is fast.
representation, and beautiful little seal there and everything. So thank you, Bao. I mean, this is incredible to be an official inventor, on US patents. I never would have
Excellent.
dreamed. This is incredible.
Excellent. Well, that's a fantastic story to hear, and I'm glad it all went very well. Good luck on your ventures, and we look forward to getting more of your patents allowed. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Bao. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, this is Bao Tran. I want to take an example of Sky Christopherson's patent application and discuss the various steps involved in preparing and filing and ultimately prosecuting the application to allowance in a quick manner. So if you look at the screen here, the application was filed on April 24th, 2025. It included the abstract, the specification, the claims, and also an application data sheet. Also, it includes, importantly, drawings. We have 47 pages of drawing, 182 pages of specification, 2 pages of claim, about 20 claims. Once we filed that, we got a filing receipt, and there's a welcome letter from the U.S. Patent Office, and there's also a notice of missing part, basically the fees that we owe, and also the declaration. We supplied a declaration on June 9th, and we paid a fee on June 9th also. And then we request to expedite in this e-petition request form on June 10th, and it was granted on June 10th as well. So we expedited the case. The final filing receipt was received on June 11th. So that's roughly about 1.5 months after filing. We supplied known prior art, as is our duty, to the patent office. And so we have a series of non-patent literatures, books and diagrams, also foreign patents, and things like that. On July 1st, we receive a non-final office action. The examiner reviewed the content of the application and the claim, and he issued a non-final rejection. So let's take a quick look at that. The non-final rejection was from examiner Joshua Blanchett, and here's the typical cover sheet of the office action. There's an office action summary of the disposition of claims, and basically in that particular examination, he indicated that this thing was rejected under Section 101, i.e. patentable subject matter. And then he also rejected the claim under obviousness, here Section 103. And you see here, that's basically obviousness, rejections right here. And he rejected those over two references, Katani and Dr. Kroon. And basically the rejection ran about 18 pages. And so then once we get that, we consulted with the inventor, Sky, and then we immediately responded on the same day that he mailed out the office action on July 1st as well. So we basically made an argument. There were two things. There were claim amendments. We amended the claim, and you'll see that here in the claims. And the area is the amendment. The black area is the original. And on top of the amendment, we also argued as to why the claim should be patentable. And we requested an interview with the examiner, and on July 3rd, we had the interview with the examiner. So the key to getting a patent quickly is once you get the office action, you study it, you talk to your inventor, you immediately draft a response, and then you set up an interview. You discuss the issue with the examiner. You do not send in just a paper reply without talking to the examiner. We talked to him on the 3rd, and basically then we refile our response. Right. Then we noticed that there were prior art that we were aware of that we hadn't submitted. So then we submitted the IDS, and we paid a late fee for submitting a late submission because the IDS was submitted after the first office action. The examiner considered all of that, and basically he essentially allowed the case on October the 2nd. And of course, there were items that we had requested, but we submitted the response, but there was no reply on that. We inquired with him on September, and that woke up the patent office, and then in October they sent out the notice of allowance. And so that was sweet news for the inventor, and this is what a notice of allowance would look like. Basically, it says the case has been allowed, a fee here in this sheet, and then he would provide the reasons for allowance here. And so that's basically what a notice of allowance looked like. We received it on October the 2nd, then we paid it on October the 9th, and we got a notice of issuance on October the 20th right here. And that basically indicated this case, 19189035, will issue as patent number 124629117, and it will issue on November 4th. And so that's an example of the power of communication and talking to your inventor as well as the examiner at the patent office. And basically, we got the case allowed within 6 months. And so that's an example of how patent prosecution should be handled. If you have any question, please email us. Visit our website at patentpc.com. Thank you.